I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Amazing FBA. This is your host Michael Veazey. Welcome to the show. Today I'm going to talk about a cock-up that I made, and by the way, yes, I'm going to swear, not hugely, but I'm going to talk like I normally talk, as I would share frankly in a mastermind with people that who know each other and trust each other. And I'm going to trust you with the truth, the unvarnished truth of a bit of a cock-up that I made, which is still playing out. It started off in China in the middle of last summer 2017. It's slowly grinding its way to resolution in Amazon with the usual slick communication from Amazon Seller Central not. So I thought I'd share this with you because they say experience is the best teacher, and I undoubtedly think that's true. It's also one of the most painful and certainly most expensive. So other people's experience, like mine, may be a place where you can learn from, so you don't have to do this again for yourself. So let me tell you this story. I'm going to look at my notes because it's a little bit involved here. So the first thing is in about May last year, 2017, I ordered about 1,800 units of a product that I've been making for ages, and the standard version is black. I wanted to try some variation, so I ordered 1,500 units of the black version because that's standard and I know that sells, and then I ordered 100 each of pink, black and white respectively, so I had 1,800 units altogether, right? So as soon as you do variations, and this is a big topic we discussed in the 10K collective the other day, and by the way, if you're interested in checking that out, go to amazingfba.com/mastermind, and you can see there are 2 levels of mastermind: the 0 to hero mastermind for people who haven't sold anything yet on Amazon or in early stages. 10K collective, as the name implies, at least doing 10K a month, preferably, and actually all of them are doing a lot more than that now. But we were discussing this because the idea of variations and testing things is great in theory. In practice though, every time you multiply anything, you multiply the possibility of things going wrong, and this is a classic example. I created an inbound shipping plan for this whilst they were being manufactured, and I got some quotes from different freight forwarders because I wanted to get them sent by sea to keep my costs low, standard stuff. The inbound shipping plan I created on the Amazon Seller Central, and as you'll know if you've done this very much yourself, you cannot control where your products end up going. Amazon decides that based on their own metrics, and in this case they decided, as they often have done with my units in this particular product line, that it was going to go to Texas. So there's a big, I think probably the biggest fulfillment center that Amazon has in the world in Texas, very, very big, about 12, about 1 million square feet or something, ludicrously huge. Anyway, so a lot of stuff ends up going there. So that's the address I gave to my freight forwarder for the purposes only of a quote. And I think this is probably mistake number 1, is that I didn't clarify. This is just for a quote. I cannot control where Amazon's going to end up sending this stuff. Please don't assume that this is actually where you want to send it if I go ahead with you, right? So I didn't say all that, and I think that's mistake number 1 that I made with this stuff. I just needed an address for the purposes of a quote, so I gave them my factory's address in Guangdong, I think, and then I gave them the Texas address, and I said okay, and then a bunch of other stuff, which I won't bore you with here, but if you want to have a cheat sheet to see what things you should avoid messing up in this situation, I have done one for you, because freight is definitely one of those areas where you want to have a checklist and tick everything off on it. And now, to be fair to my past self, I didn't imagine that the story as I told you would even be possible, so I didn't have one for this particular scenario. I do have checklists, so if you want a freight checklist that would help avoid some of these issues, then go to the show notes and you can download it there in exchange for your email address. So back to the story. So I then placed the order for the units, and I wanted to get the quote actually before I placed the order, if I remember correctly, because I wanted to do my profit and loss spreadsheet. And part of the problem with lining up products to sell is that you need to do a lot of calculation before you really know whether it's even worth selling them, and I wanted to make sure that my numbers stacked up. So I got my quote, then I chose my freight forwarder, then based on those numbers I went back to my manufacturer, renegotiated the price. Again, it's all about the numbers, and I'm going to bore you with that because that really is a whole episode in itself. But then I placed the order, and then the freight forwarder took over from there, and I thought that was that, right? I created a real shipment plan. I sent the freight forwarder a PDF with the shipping labels to go on the outside of the cartons, which were to a completely different fulfillment center in Pennsylvania, so about, as it turns out, 1,800 miles northeast of the Texas one, or northeast, I guess. I sent the PDF over, and that was probably mistake number 2, which is that I didn't say to the freight forwarder, do not use any old addresses I gave you. They were just for quote purposes. Please make sure you print off this shipping label. Now, to be fair to me, she came recommended, had been by a fellow FBA seller, and she had been used to dealing with Amazon. So one of those things where I wasn't wrong to assume in the specific sense, but I was wrong to assume in the general sense, because as they say, an arse assuming makes an arse out of you and me, if you wanted the polite version. My favorite is the more direct. Assumption is the mother of all fuck ups, because in my experience that is really, really true. So mistake number 2, I assumed that she would know how to use the information that I sent. And I would say mistake number 3 is that I sent it once, and I didn't send it in multiple ways either. So she may not have even seen that, possibly. I think she may have done, but that was an assumption as well. So what happened in the end? Well, there I am thinking I've handed it over to a professional who knows about Amazon, my supplier I've worked with many times. All is good. It's all off to Pennsylvania. I'll get the units in soon. And of course, then I get some message on Amazon. I can't remember exactly how it got communicated, but basically it emerged that she was sending, maybe it wasn't even Amazon, maybe it was a freight forwarder. I don't remember all the details. But the point is, it emerged that these units were on their way to Texas, not Pennsylvania, which is obviously a great oh fuck moment for me. And excuse my French, but this is me, and this is how I actually speak, right? You know, this isn't a varnished version of me or my story in Amazon. And needless to say, very unhappy. I got hold of the freight forwarder. She could see that it was basically her mistake, and you know, that was clear that I'd sent her the shipping labels as is conventional, and she'd ignored it. Now, she could have argued, and there would have been something in it that I confused the issue, but fortunately she just said, okay, look, I'll deal with it and we'll pay for it. So, which I was very grateful for, and I thought, well, okay, she messed up, but she's sorting it. Done. Okay, I might use her again, although with a bit of a question mark over it. Then things, you know, went ahead, things landed, the shipment landed in Pennsylvania, the units were processed by Amazon, were put on sale. I'm like, great, all done and dusted, and we're ready for Q4. They're ready to start selling hard in, you know, November, December. In November and December this past year, I got distracted by a new deal with a new company. I was basically going to manage their Amazon account for them. And there are many lessons to be learned from that, by the way, which I will talk about in a future episode, where some fundamental mistakes that they made and some mistakes that I made even agreeing to go into this thing. But, you know, without being disrespectful to them, there are lessons to be learned. Again, experience is the best teacher, but other people's experience is cheaper and less painful. So one of the things I did is that I got distracted from my core business, and that's okay to explore new things, but I took my eye off the ball too much with my own core business, the Amazon core business, which was a mistake, it turns out. So the new deal, we had to make arrangements, we'd had new agreements, setting up a whole new Amazon account is a lot of work, setting up new listings, going back and forth with people, etc. Anyway, so suffice it to say, I wasn't really keeping much of an eye on my Amazon account. I was doing the daily work and answering the messages that came through, but I wasn't really spending much time dealing with the nuances. And about December, a complaint came through that somebody had ordered a black light but not received a pink one, not a black one. So now this is a thing that can occasionally happen, but mistake number 4 or 5 that I made by this point was really that I had not I didn't immediately go, whoa, this is a warning, I ought to deal with this. This looks odd, because that doesn't happen very often. As I say, I was very involved in dealing with this new account, and I got distracted, which is another mistake that I made. So more messages, and then we had another negative review, somebody saying, you know, I ordered a black light and I got a pink one, this is shocking. I mean, you know, common sense says this isn't so much me trying to rip people off as just a meddle in the warehouse. But of course, Amazon shoppers, being the lovely, intelligent people that a few of them are, the ones that leave the reviews like that anyway, they didn't reach out to me and do the sensible thing. They left a negative review. So that obviously didn't help things. I mean, fortunately, that product's now got about, I don't know, somewhere just short of 100 reviews. It's not a lot, but it's enough. And so it cushioned the blow, but not helpful. So by this point, I'm starting to take this a bit more seriously. And somebody else wrote in with a message, and at this point I'm thinking, well, okay, so this is like the 3rd or 4th instance of this. There is something wrong in the warehouse with the labeling. They're labeling pink units as if they're black. So I asked a customer for a photograph of the unit, and very clearly, as I had asked my supplier, which is one of the more intelligent things I had done, there was the word pink in a nice little label on the box itself. And behind it, there was an FNSKU label, which is one of the Amazon internal labels, if you're not familiar with that stuff, which said the word pink on it, as well as a barcode. And then over it, in a smaller FNSKU label, was stuck one that's clearly said black and the barcode. So they had obviously been correctly initially labeled and then mislabeled. So my first instinct, which was a mistake number 6, was to try and blame my supplier. And we did have a conversation, but at least we had a conversation, which again, at least I was communicating. Had a Skype chat, and I said, so it looks like these were wrongly labeled. And he said, well, okay, our labels are this size, whatever it is, 7 by 4 centimeters, and the ones you're showing me, I forwarded him the photographs, and he said the ones you're showing me are smaller, so they weren't the ones we put on. So at least it was clear that it wasn't his mistake. Amazon had obviously mislabeled them. The thing I then did was, which is one of the most sensible things that I ever do, which is to reach out to my mastermind buddies and on a Facebook chat and just say, guys, this has happened. What do you think's happened? And somebody immediately came back with much more experience than I have, although enough by now. But somebody's done tons of turnover and very familiar with the ins and outs and has hit all the problems, which is what I'm trying to do for you. And he said, yeah, that sounds like they just came in, the cartons were mislabeled, and that probably means that Amazon would mislabel the individual units. So then it was fairly obvious that the freight forwarder had messed up, and therefore that I had to go back to the freight forwarder. So the supplier was not in the frame, the freight forwarder was. And to some extent Amazon, but obviously Amazon is not somebody who can do these things. So I want to point out here the importance of having a group you can reach out to with people who really know what they're talking about, rather than just randoms on the internet, of which there are many. So another very good reason to be in a mastermind of your peers, rather than sort of people who never actually do anything. And again, just a quick plug, if you want to reach out to me to explore more about that, amazingfba.com/mastermind. You can check out the 10K Collective if you're at that level, doing at least $10,000 and probably more like $20,000 a month now to get taken seriously for that, or pound or euro equivalent, or the Zero to Hero Mastermind. But I digress, but I don't, because really that's what saves my bacon in all these situations. I've got a bunch of people I can call on who know their stuff. But anyway, so I went back and did what I should have done as soon as the shipment landed, which is to go back to my manage inventory, go down to the drop down menu to manage FBA shipments, and went into my shipment and checked on the reconcile tab, which is something I've been extraordinarily lax about so far, probably because things have worked out very well for me so far, and given the amount of time I've been selling on Amazon over 3 years, this has been one of the rare occasions where something is messed up. And I guess it's because I was using a new sort of freight transport supply chain, if you like. So yeah, when you're doing something new, that was mistake number whatever it is, 6, 7, I can't remember what we're up to now. That was basically not being extra careful when using a new supply chain component, if you like, in this case a freight forwarder. So anyway, I went back and I could immediately see that instead of having 1,500 units of the black stuff, 100 units of pink, 100 of white, 100 of whatever the other one is, blue, I had sort of excessive numbers of black ones showing that they'd expected 1,500 according to the inbound shipment plan, and they'd actually received something like 1,600, and then some of the pink were 50 down and some of the white were 50 down, which made me think, oh my goodness, they've relabeled some of the stuff as pink. They've relabeled some pink units as black, and they've relabeled some white units as black as well. So I'm going to get all kinds of complaints here. So I immediately said, right, I want you to investigate this and reconciling thing. So I raised a case with Amazon Seller Central about this, and one nice thing is that they pretty quickly gave me exactly $1,699 in compensation for 100 blue and white missing units, which is rather a nice number. It's higher than the landed cost per unit, which was around $4 to $4.50, and actually higher than it had been selling for, which is between about $13 and max $15. That is probably based on some internal metrics we don't understand, but also, apart from anything else, the list price that I had it on at, which is a bit of a clue. So if you're shipping things in, if there is going to be any mess up by Amazon in their warehouses, which does occasionally happen, it's worth having the list price reasonably high. Although I know that the list price is going to be done away with pretty soon in Amazon.com in America. So you won't be able to show the different list versus sale price, i.e. what do you actually sell it for. But bit of a hint, for as long as that lasts, by the time you listen to this episode, that may have gone anyway. But that was a nice bonus. So I actually did quite well out of that. What hasn't happened yet is that I've been asking them to do what's called a bin check, which is what one of my fellows in my mastermind advised me to do. So bin check is when you go back to Amazon and say, please look through the bins, the plastic bins they store units in, if they're small ones, to check that these things are actually black, not pink. And so far, of course, with their traditional way of communicating beautifully when there's a problem, I have had to ask Amazon about 6 times and they haven't come back to me about that. But at least they've given me compensation. So the overall outcome has some, silver lining. I've got compensated more than I was going to make if I sold them and in one chunk. That's quite nice. Unfortunately, because the black units are very suspect, I had to suspend that listing, and in fact I think Amazon then said something like they were going to ask me to suspend it anyway, or they did it themselves or whatever. I think I got in there first, but the point is you can't have a listing which is telling people they're getting something in one color and giving it to them in another color with any kind of level of frequency. So that was one of those things that is cost me a lot of sales, and of course the Amazon dragging their heels since has not helped either. I haven't gone back to my freight forwarder yet because rather than, I suppose I'm going to go back to them and flag it up, but I want to go back to them with a complete picture and say, right, here's the proof. Amazon has said this is what must have happened. I'm going to ask you for compensation because I don't know how much to ask them for yet. On the other hand, I think it's time to open those communication channels, because really the lessons learned from this, which I'll talk about in a second, is really about poor communication. So we come to the lessons that I've learned from this sad little episode. So the first thing I think to say is to remember getting it right first time is way cheaper than fixing things when you've done it. Now, I wouldn't say that's true for everything in your FBA business. You don't get too perfectionist about your listing, for example. You can redo it, you can optimize it as the name implies, rather than just changing things up front because you think something is going to happen, change in response to the market. That said, though, when it comes to supply chain stuff, especially freight and production, manufacture, it's worth getting it right first time. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. So I think a checklist is a very, very good thing to do that. And as I said, if you want to find a checklist, go to amazingfba.com, just give your email address, and we give you a simplified checklist around using freight forwarders specifically. I mean, I'm not going to give you a whole checklist around the whole freight chain because that is huge. I mean, I can give you different ones. If you're interested in me creating one, then email me, or preferably come to the Facebook group amazingfba.com/FB, F as in Facebook, as in book, and put it in a comment, or send a PM via the Amazing FBA page is what I'm trying to say. So that's the first lesson. Second lesson, clear communication. Tell people what to do and not what to do. Never assume. So assumption being the mother of all F-ups, as they say. That's really, really important. I think that's the number one thing I missed here. The third lesson is you should have one message multiple times instead of 2 different conflicting messages via one channel. So I sent a couple of emails and a Skype message, one of which was basically give me the quote based on the Texas address, and the other one was, here's the shipping label, which I didn't even say has a Pennsylvania address, let alone spelling out what I wanted her to do with it. So spell everything out really and do it multiple times. The other thing that's really important, lesson number 4, check everything. Again, assumption is the mother of all the F-ups. Checking is the solution. You should check everything that's important. I always, for whatever reason, getting obsessed these days with watching various things about aircraft crashes, and whenever there's a crash in an aircraft, a civilian one, it's normally because they haven't done their checklist properly, or they haven't diagnosed something. It's just a chain of bad events which could have been prevented at any single point if they'd used the checklist properly. So that's what I would suggest. Lesson number 5, really, delegate, don't abdicate. So I fell flat into a trap here, headlong, face first, which is that I delegated it to somebody that I think is competent, and therefore I'd taken my eye off the ball. What I should have done is monitored Seller Central for the reconciling tab under there. So if you want to do it yourself, you just go manage inventory. Under that you go to manage shipment, and then you'll get click on the actual shipment ID, and then you'll get 3 tabs, the third of which is the reconcile tab. So that is what I should have done. I knew about it, I was lazy about it because I trusted somebody. Trusting is good, but trust and check is better. Number 6, lesson number 6, I didn't respond to the signs of trouble. I got people telling me quite early on in the autumn, sort of Q4 November time. By the way, I've got a black product that I ordered, but I received a pink one. What's going on? And I should have responded and said, this needs investigation, instead of being distracted. Lesson number 7, a more general lesson: don't get distracted by the new thing. And in my case, running somebody else's Seller Central account from apparently stable existing income streams. The apparently stable on Amazon can go wrong quite swiftly, as you may have experienced already if you've been around the block with Amazon. And if you haven't, then take it from me and go and talk to some other people who have been around the block a bit, and they will tell you that's true. So just because something seems to be working well doesn't mean you shouldn't be checking that it is. You know, so that's one big lesson I've learned from this. Lesson number 8: don't assume you know who's at fault. Check the details before you ascertain who's at fault, instead of blaming. And I just basically went back to my supplier and assumed that he'd messed up. To be fair to me, he had messed up. When I say he, I mean my contact there was a he. They have messed up on some numerous occasions in various ways, sometimes big ways. So I wasn't wrong to assume that they're capable of messing things up, but I was wrong to shoot first. I should have double checked the facts. But actually, it was useful to have the conversation. I guess I didn't flat out accuse him of getting it wrong, but I think that was the vibe. And really, what I should have done is said, okay, here's the thing that's going on. What's your response? And you know, that's more or less what I did. I think I could have just taken the sort of blame out of it, because in fact he was totally innocent. He'd done all the right things, and therefore it was a bit embarrassing for me to say, well, I apologize for trying to blame this on you. Lesson number 9 is a really simple one, which applies way broader than this particular issue, which is join a peer group and reach out to them when you need help. These are two separate things. I think this is one of the smartest things I've ever done in my life, is to join an Amazon mastermind group of my own. And one of the best things I've done for the Amazon selling community is to run masterminds for them. Now, having said that, I've got people in my mastermind who've paid up, who never turn up again. They don't even respond to emails. They just disappear. Missing in action, as we call it. We have a missing in action list these days, and I'll try and get around to calling people occasionally, because however many emails I send to some people, or even text messages, there's just no response. So please don't do that. If you're going to join a mastermind, use it. You know, use your common sense. And if you've got a mentor or you know, some kind of coach that you're working with who knows their stuff, has been there before, then use them. Don't do unilateral stuff that you could have saved yourself, you know, incredible amount of trouble if you could just reach out to somebody and say, right, how do I do this? You know, so those are the two things that I would take out of that. I'm fortunate in having that myself. And I would advise you to do the same if you are not yet in a mastermind group. You could check out the one if you can get to London once a month. You could check out amazingfba.com/mastermind. If you're a beginner, that'll be the Zero to Hero mastermind. If you're doing over 10k a month minimum, then you will want to click through to the 10k collective. We do have spaces in both masterminds, very limited space in the 10k collective. I think we've probably got space for 1 or 2 more people, but it's really humming, that place. Some people taking major action. I'll talk about that more in another place. But the lesson number 10 is really a kind of 2-part thing. Keep taking action and learning from mistakes. That said, though, it's cheaper to learn from other people's mistakes, which kind of brings me back to lesson 9. So join a mastermind. That's what I would suggest. Get a mentor if you need one. A mastermind if you can not afford a mentor. Those would be my suggestions. I practice what I preach, and I am preaching this, and I do think it's very important. I don't know many successful Amazon sellers who work in isolation very well, to be honest. I know a few, but even they come out of their closet, as it were, and start communicating with the world sooner or later. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed the nitty-gritty of this. It's not always that exciting to go into the nitty-gritty of freight and stuff, and maybe that's why I allow this stuff to happen. I'm not the only person that lets freight mess-ups happen, I can tell you, either for beginners or more people who should know better, and I'm definitely in the latter category. I should know better, but we all get bored by the detail and we skimp on the detail, and that is when things go wrong. So hopefully my not very riveting but very realistic story, well, because it's just my truth, has given you some food for thought. And if it saves even 1 or 2 people who are listening to this the huge amounts of headaches that I'm going to have to get through to resolve this thing by the time the story has come to its end, then it's all been worth it. So thank you very much for listening, for your attention, and speak to you soon. Happy hunting. Welcome to Amazing FBA. Today's show is brought to you by Escape the Rat Race, run by Christian Rodwell. Escape the Rat Race is there to do one job: help people escape the day job and create financial freedom for themselves. I'm going to be collaborating with Christian to run physical training in London, England on the 21st of April. So that's what I'm talking about now. If you think you might be able to make that, listen up, because we are doing in-person training in a very small group, maximum 6 people. We've already sold 4 places. And the purpose is that is very, very simple: to make sure you get over the biggest roadblock, which is getting something selling online, on Amazon, I should say, and then basically deciding which product you're going to be able to private label. That's the purpose of the day. Very, very powerful, very simple. You're going to be focused because it's in person. You're not going to be distracted in the online environment or your office or whatever other place you might work on a business. Plus, you'll be free to discuss things absolutely openly, because we'll all sign a non-disclosure agreement, and it's a small group, not a massive Facebook group. You're going to get also an amazing deal this time round, and this time round only, which is ongoing support in the form of 3 months of free membership of the Zero to Hero Mastermind, which meets once a month, mostly Saturdays as well, in London. So you need to be able to get to London, of course, to make this work for you. Plus 90 minutes of online mentoring or in-person mentoring with me personally. So you don't need to get it to London for that. So it's a very powerful package. I believe that this is going to be the most powerful way to move you forward out there, simply because offline is way more focused than online, and the hand-holding and the ongoing implementation support is really what makes the difference. So if you want to check that out, go to amazingfba.com/workshop. If the thing is already sold out, don't panic, because we will have an email sign up there and we'll keep you posted. If you are interested in future training, we're definitely going to be running it again, because there is a need out there. Thanks so much for listening.